But now to climate change, where after weeks of mass protest in Britain by hundreds of thousands of people in what's been dubbed the Extinction Rebellion, the UK Parliament has declared a climate change emergency. It's unlikely to come into effect unless Labour wins power, but even the Bank of England is now threatening dire consequences if Britain fails to act.
Climate change could wipe out $20 trillion of assets, Bank of England warns.
So, with an election in Australia just 2 weeks away, how is the media here, and the Murdoch media in particular, covering the issue? Spin through a few News Corp front pages, and its determination to ridicule climate action and keep it to a minimum could not be clearer.
April Fool's Day.
Carbon bills, green whack. Our carbon cut apocalypse.
And last week this campaign continued with alarming new predictions on the front page of The Australian about the cost of Labor's climate plans.
Price carbon cuts?
Yes, you can.
GDP lost $264 billion.
Jobs lost 166,500.
The wholesale electricity price in 2030 could be as much as 50% higher.
And on News Corp's Sky After Dark, the usual suspects naturally took up the refrain.
It's $264 billion to be precise, $250 billion by 2030.
Where is the rest of the media in pursuing this? 264 billion was the best case scenario, Andrew. It could be upwards of 542 billion, the cost of the economy.
As with several previous attacks, this latest News Corp barrage relied entirely on modelling by one economist, Dr Brian Fisher, who has worked extensively for the Minerals Council of Australia, which would lose heavily if Labor's policy were implemented. A fact noted by Labor leader Bill Shorten.
This fellow in his report remind me of the doctors that big tobacco companies used to roll out in the 70s and 80s to say that smoking was healthy for you. We do not. We will file this report under P for propaganda.
Fisher's apocalyptic forecasts were also attacked by left-wing think tank the Australia Institute.
The last time Australians saw Labor's climate policies in action, emissions went down 2%, the economy grew by 5% and employment increased by 200,000 jobs.
And they were dismissed by a cavalcade of carbon experts, including the ANU's Professor Warwick McKibbin, who costed our Paris commitments for the coalition government in 2015, so should know what he's talking about.
The impact of Australian Labor's climate proposal would be a small fraction of the economy by 2030, says ANU expert Warwick McKibbin.
And McKibbin was backed by a host of others, including Professor Frank Yotso, director of the ANU's Centre for Climate Economics and Policy.
Brian Fisher's modelling of emissions targets uses absurd cost assumptions. An abatement cost curve like this would have looked very high 20 years ago. Now it's simply ridiculous.
Meanwhile, Melbourne University's climate law expert Tim Baxter rejected the modelling and tweeted,
"Literally no one I know, and I know a lot of people moving in this space, has any respect for Brian Fisher's work. Can the media please stop reporting it as if it is reliable?"
Now, if you'd run a front-page story based entirely on Fisher's work, as The Australian had done, you should surely pass such criticisms on to readers. But the Oz did not think them worth a mention, although it did run another front-page story about an egg attack on Fisher's house, which included the criticisms from Shorten, and quoted Fisher saying,
"I'm not claiming to have all the facts, I just wanted to get some sort of economic discussion going."
Fair enough. Just a shame The Australian didn't make that clear the day before. Of course, the media should ask what Labor's climate policy will cost, and if Labor can't give a figure, by all means, publish other people's forecasts, however extreme. But have a discussion. Hear both sides. Don't claim it as gospel. The media's duty is to report fairly and responsibly, especially when the Bank of England is talking climate catastrophe and the UK Parliament has declared a climate emergency. But time and again, News Corp has failed to do that.